Good afternoon, everyone. This is the November 9th, 2021 meeting of the City Finance Committee. And may I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Committee Chair. We'll start with Committee Member Harmon.
Here.
Committee Member Gutierrez.
Here.
And Committee Chair Friedman.
Here. All right, we are all here and ready to go. So before we get to our first item of the day, we do have public comment. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak to any items not on today's agenda, but under the purview of the City Finance Committee? If you do wish to speak during regular public comment, please raise your hand in the app. And Mr. DiMartini, if you could monitor the app, and is anyone raising their hand?
Yes, Chair Friedman, I am monitoring the app and public comment, and there are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, I will go ahead and close general public comment. And we are on to item 1, which is the subject to fund 116 East Coda Street. And I will turn it over to, is it you, Mr. DiMartini, for the presentation, or it's Ms. Doubles? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Friedman and Council members Gutierrez and Harmon. I am Laura Doubles, and I'm the Housing and Human Services Manager for the city. Thank you for having me here today to discuss this very vital affordable housing development project that the city is partnering with the city's housing authority, known as Veracruz Village. Due to some unforeseen economic conditions, the construction costs have increased substantially on this project, now at the point of breaking ground, which has created a funding gap that I will discuss in this presentation. Housing Authority staff is also here today with me to answer any questions regarding this project as well. Next slide, please. Staff's recommendation is laid out on the next 2 slides and includes the following. A, that recommend that City Council, for the Finance Committee to recommend that the City Council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara approving a 30-year loan agreement secured by a deed of trust with the 116 East Coda Street Associates LP in the amount of $1,550,989 for an affordable housing project located at 110-116 East Coda Street, and authorizing the Community Development Director to execute such documents, subject to approval as to form by the City Attorney as necessary. And next slide, please. For the Finance Committee to recommend that City Council approve an increase in fiscal year 2022 appropriations in the City Affordable Housing Fund in the amount of $1,550,989 coming from reserves to fund the requested property development loan. Next slide, please. As is required with projects that apply for low-income housing tax credits for financing affordable housing projects, the Housing Authority has created a limited partnership known as 116 East Coda Street Associates LP, and the property will be transferred to this entity for development. The property is located at 110-116 East Coda Street, and the proposed development will be for 29 total units, which will include 28 studio units and one bedroom manager's unit. The 28 units will provide supportive housing to homeless individuals and will be restricted mostly to low income and below, with most units being very low and extremely low. The breakdown of unit categories will be 12 units at 30% AMI or below, which is considered extremely low income, 12 at 45% AMI or below, which is very low income category, 2 at 50% AMI or below, which is also very low income, and 2 at 60% AMI or below, which is low income. This will allow a very small amount of income as individuals begin to transition from homelessness. Wraparound supportive services will be provided to these individuals who occupy these units. Next slide, please. For reference, this is a picture of the property undeveloped as of now. Next slide, please. And this is a drawing of the newly proposed development once it is constructed. Next slide, please. On June 23rd, 2020, after approval from this Finance Committee, the City Council also unanimously gave approval to provide a $2 million loan in order to partner with the Housing Authority and acquire the property at 110-116 East Coda Street for this eventual development plan. That loan was provided with standard city terms for affordable housing projects of 3% simple interest over 30 years with residual receipts payments, which are payments that only result if a net cash flow after operating costs is realized. The Housing Authority diligently worked then to apply for the low-income housing tax credits, which is really a very long and tedious, complex, and extremely competitive process. In June of this year, good news was they successfully was awarded the $9,193,000 for the project in low-income housing tax credits. Then they went on to secure another $5.2 million from a commercial lender in order to provide the remaining funding at that time needed for the development. Next slide, please. However, due to unforeseen economic conditions, the cost for the construction materials and labor has significantly increased, resulting in a financing gap of approximately $2.4 million. The Housing Authority has submitted an application to the state's HCD for the CDBG disaster recovery funding in the amount of $848,011 in grant funds that have been allocated to the city for the 2017 disasters and is awaiting award of those funds. The project does qualify for the funding, and if awarded, will help to fill the needed $2.4 million gap. Next slide, please. The increased project costs are listed on the screen here and takes into account the $2.4 million gap now. As you can see, the project total is now at a little over $20 million, at $20,370,000. Next slide, please. And the financing for the project, with the exception of the current application for the $848,011 CDBG DR grant that has been secured, is that is in process, is listed on this screen. The total that has been or projected to be secured is $18,819,011, which still leaves a gap to be filled. Next slide, please. The resulting gap of $1,550,989, which is the difference of the $20,730,000 project costs minus the $18,819,011 secured financing, is the amount being requested today by the Housing Authority to fill this gap in order to be able to successfully complete this project. If approved, staff is proposing that this funding be provided in the same manner as the original $2 million acquisition loan provided, with the city's standard terms again, which were 3% simple interest for 30 years with residual receipts payments. Next slide, please. The city's long-term 90-year affordability covenant is already in first position, recorded on title, and will remain in place for this additional funding, so no new covenant will be needed. The state, as is required, We'll also be placing a 55-year tax regulatory agreement for the low-income housing tax credits issued for this project, so as to also restrict the affordability as I have outlined. All studio units will be restricted to low-income and below tenants, with most being in the extremely low to very low income range, with the target population as homeless. Next slide, please. In summary, this housing will have wraparound supportive services and is for homeless individuals. It will be developed by our long-time partner and award-winning developer, the city's housing authority, and the project also meets the city's consolidated plan objectives and housing element priorities. The development is required to be ready to start construction on December 27th, 2021. So this is an urgent matter, and if approved, it will be heard at council today for the full council consideration. Next slide, please. This brings us back to the staff's recommendation, and on the next two screens, we are asking that the Finance Committee approve to move staff's recommendations forward to the council for consideration today so that we may move forward with the Housing Authority through its limited partnership known as 116 East Coda Street Associates LP to ensure the completion of the development of this very valuable, affordable housing for our community. Thank you, and I am here to take questions if needed.
Thank you, Ms. Doubles. Any questions from my colleagues at this point? Not seeing any. I just had a question. The funding is from the City Affordable Housing Fund, and just wanted to clarify that's not general fund from the city?
Correct, Chair Friedman. It is from our Affordable Housing Fund, which is not general fund.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Not seeing any. I will open it up to public comment now. And is there any member of the public who wishes to speak to this item? Please raise your hand in the app. And Mr. DiMartini, if you could help me monitor that. Is there anybody who wishes to speak?
Mr. Chair Friedman, I am monitoring public comment. I see no hands raised at this time.
Thank you. I will close public comment. And now I need a motion from one of my colleagues. Councilmember Hartman.
Thank you, Chair Friedman. Well, I just want to say how much I appreciate everyone coming together to make this happen. This is just such a good use of our funds, and it's incredibly important that we seize on opportunities to get housing now for people who need it. So I'm just really very proud of the work that's gone into this, and very appreciative also that everyone moved so quickly to make this happen. So I would be honored, Mr. Chair, to make the motion to support this and send it on to council for full consideration.
Great, so the motion has been made. I see Councilmember Gutierrez, you have your camera on, so the floor is yours.
I will second the motion and want to thank everybody involved in this project. Really excited to see it go through.
Great, thanks. The motion's been made and seconded, and I just also want to thank you to our staff and all that have moved this project forward. As we know, it is very difficult to finance these types of projects, and so they go a long ways towards diversifying our community and those who live here, as well as helping us achieve our regional housing needs numbers that we have in the city of Santa Barbara. So thank you to the Housing Authority, who is a great partner with that. So with that, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Chair Friedman, there was a motion by Committee Member Harmon. It was seconded by Committee Member Gutierrez. So we'll start with Committee Member Gutierrez.
Yes.
Committee Member Harmon.
Yes.
And then Committee Chair Friedman.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. And that will be forwarded on to the City Council. So with that, that is our only item on today's agenda. So this meeting of the Finance Committee is adjourned, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.